Ethan Parker had always been the quiet one in his family, the kind of person who showed up to every birthday, wedding, or funeral but somehow was never really seen. He was the one who helped clean up after parties, who lent money that no one remembered borrowing, who listened but was never listened to. And when he finally decided to leave, to pack his life into a truck and drive hundreds of miles away, nobody cared enough to ask why. He remembered the last dinner he'd had with them all. It was at his parents' old house in Brookdale, a creaky, over-furnished home that smelled of old carpet and disappointment. His sister Jenna scrolled through her phone the entire time, laughing at memes. His older brother Ryan bragged about his latest investment in some can't-fail crypto fund. His mother only asked one question. So, how much did the new house cost? When Ethan told her the price, she gave a low whistle. Must be nice, she said flatly. All that money for what? A box with walls. He didn't argue. He just smiled, finished his meal, and said quietly, "It's not the walls that matter, Mom. It's the peace." They didn't even come to help him move. The day the truck arrived, it was just him and a hired driver hauling boxes labeled kitchen and workshop into the van. His family group chat stayed silent except for one message from Jenna. Good luck being mysterious. Don't come crying when you realize we were right. He didn't reply. He deleted the chat. The drive took 10 hours. As the city skyline disappeared behind him, Ethan felt an odd kind of calm, like a tight band around his chest had finally snapped loose. He drove with the windows half open, the late summer air whipping his hair. Every mile was a small victory, a reminder that freedom sometimes means choosing silence over company. The new house sat on the edge of a small town called Willow Creek. It wasn't large, but it was his. Clean lines, soft lighting, white walls that reflected morning sunlight like promise. He spent the first week setting up cameras. Front gate, driveway, porch, garage, backyard. He told himself it was for safety, but deep down, it was because he had learned one thing from his family. You could never really trust anyone. His new life started quietly. He woke early, brewed his coffee, and worked on his custom furniture designs. His small online business was finally thriving. Orders were coming in fast. Oak shelves, walnut tables, hand-finished chairs, and people were paying good money for his craftsmanship. In the evenings, he sat on the porch with a notebook, sketching ideas while the crickets sang. Still, some nights were hard. There were moments when the silence grew too loud, when he'd glance at his phone half expecting a message that never came. He told himself he didn't care, but birthdays came and went, and no one texted. When Christmas arrived, his mother posted family photos online. He wasn't in any of them. He stared at the screen for a long time, then scrolled down to see Ryan's comment, "Family forever red hearts." Ethan let out a short, bitter laugh. "Yeah," he muttered to himself. "Forever until you stop being useful." He closed the app and went back to his workbench. That night, he built a small oak box. Smooth edges, polished finish, sturdy enough to last decades. He didn't know why he made it. Maybe it was for keepsakes. Maybe for closure. Days turned into weeks. The quiet of Willow Creek grew comforting. He planted small flowers along the fence, started feeding a stray cat that lingered near his porch, and even learned to enjoy the sound of rain tapping on his windows. Life felt simple, controllable, until one cold evening in November. It was past 11 when the motion alert buzzed on his phone. The feed showed rain pouring in sheets across his driveway. Ethan squinted at the screen, confused. A figure was standing at his front gate. Then 2. Then 3. He blinked hard. No, it couldn't be. The faces were unmistakable. His mother, soaked and pale. Jenna, clutching her coat like a shield. And Ryan, pacing with his hands buried in his pockets, his jaw tight. Ethan froze. His heart thudded. He turned on the porch light through the app, and the camera sharpened their outlines. They looked desperate. Ryan leaned toward the gate, shouting something, but the rain drowned his words. Jenna's lips were trembling, her mascara streaked. His mother stepped forward and spoke directly into the intercom. her voice cracking through the static. "Ethan, please. We need help." Ethan didn't move. He sat in the dark, staring at the small glowing screen in his hand, every memory rushing back, every insult, every dismissal, every time they laughed when he struggled. He pressed the microphone button and whispered, almost to himself, "Why now?" Ryan's voice came through the rain, sharp and angry. "This isn't about that. Just open the gate." But Ethan didn't. He watched, silent, as they huddled beneath the flickering porch light, soaked to the bone, their breaths visible in the cold. He leaned back on the couch, crossed his arms, and let the irony settle like smoke in his chest. The family that once told him he'd never survive alone had finally come knocking on the door of the man they'd abandoned. And for the first time in his life, Ethan didn't feel small. He felt in control. As the rain drummed harder, his mother looked directly into the camera again. "Ethan," she whispered, "your father's gone. We lost everything." Her words lingered in the air like thunder waiting to strike. Ethan's finger hovered over the gate control button. He could let them in. He could open the door. But instead, he turned off the screen, leaned back, and whispered into the dark. "Now you know how it feels." Outside, the rain kept falling. The rain didn't stop that night. It poured like the sky had something to say, each drop hitting the glass windows like an accusation. Ethan sat motionless on his couch, the glow of his phone screen flickering across his face. He'd turned off the audio feed, but the sight of them, his mother, his brother, his sister, lingered in his mind like a stain he couldn't scrub out. They had looked miserable, desperate. But for Ethan, the word that came to mind wasn't pity, it was justice. 4 years, he had been invisible to them, the afterthought, the one they mocked when he failed and ignored when he succeeded. Now they stood outside in the rain, waiting for the same kindness they'd never shown him. And maybe that was what hurt the most. How quickly they came running when they needed something. He poured himself a glass of water and walked toward the window. Outside, under the dim light of the gate camera, his family huddled together, soaked and shivering. The SUV behind them blinked its hazard lights in steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. Ethan turned on the microphone again. His voice was calm, low, and even. "Why now?" Ryan's head jerked up, his face flashing with irritation. "Because we need you, all right? You happy now?" Ethan didn't answer. He just watched as his mother stepped forward, her wet hair clinging to her cheeks. "Ethan, please," she said softly. "It's not what you think. We just need to talk. Please let us in." He could hear the tremble in her voice. Years ago, he would have rushed out immediately, grabbed towels, made tea, tried to fix whatever was wrong. But that version of him had been buried the day they stopped picking up his calls. "What happened?" he finally asked. Ryan hesitated. "It's complicated." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Try me." Jenna looked away, biting her lip. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. "Dad's gone, Ethan. A few months ago. Heart attack. We didn't know how to reach you. Your number changed." Ethan frowned slightly. "No, it didn't." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the hiss of rain. His mother wiped her tears and continued. "Things got bad after that. Ryan lost some money, and—" "I didn't lose it," Ryan snapped. "It was stolen." Ethan's tone stayed flat. "By who?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "It doesn't matter. The point is, we have nowhere else to go right now." Ethan leaned back on his couch, fingers tapping against the phone. "You didn't come for me when I needed you. Why should I open my door now?" Ryan's patience snapped. "Because we're your family." Ethan's reply was cold. "You remembered that a little late." Ryan started shouting, his voice muffled by the rain. Jenna tried to calm him, but he pushed her hand away. Their mother whispered something, her face drawn with exhaustion. Ethan watched all of it in silence, detached, as if watching a movie he'd already seen 100 times. Eventually, His mother looked directly at the camera again. "Ethan, please. Just for tonight. We'll leave tomorrow. I swear." Her words echoed in his head. Just for tonight. He had heard that tone before, the tone that always came right before they used him again. He didn't respond. He turned off the mic, stood up, and walked toward his front door. Through the peephole, he could see their outlines faintly illuminated by the porch light. For a moment, something inside him wavered, a small flicker of the son who still cared. Then he remembered. The times he'd sat alone at the hospital waiting room when he broke his arm and no one came. The time he'd borrowed money to help Ryan's first big project and never got it back. The time Jenna laughed when their mother said, "Ethan's too soft for this world." Soft. That word had burned a hole in his memory. He stepped back from the door and let the moment pass. Outside, thunder cracked, and the rain came down harder. His mother and siblings retreated toward the SUV, but it wouldn't start. The headlights flickered weakly, then died completely. They were stranded. Ethan checked the time. 12:27 a.m. He sighed and opened the live camera feed again. The three figures sat in the car, unmoving, fog gathering on the windshield. He zoomed in slightly. Jenna's face was pale. Ryan had his head in his hands. His mother stared at the house as if she could will it to open. He whispered under his breath, "You're not the only one who's been left out in the rain." Hours passed. By 3 a.m., the car lights went dark completely. They were asleep inside, slumped against the seats, shivering under coats. Ethan felt a strange mix of satisfaction and unease. He wasn't cruel by nature, but he wasn't the same man they remembered. Maybe this was the only way they'd ever understand the weight of their neglect. The next morning, he woke to the sound of birds and the faint ping of a motion alert. He opened the feed again. The SUV was gone. But as he zoomed in, he noticed something on the gate, something small and white, fluttering in the breeze. He went outside cautiously. The air was damp and cool, the driveway shining with puddles. A single envelope was taped to the gate. He tore it open and read the shaky handwriting. "Ethan, we're sorry. We didn't know where else to turn. Please call us. We'll be waiting. Mom." He stood there for a long moment, the paper trembling in his hand. Then he folded it neatly and tucked it into his pocket. He didn't call. Instead, he went back inside, turned on his security cameras, and re-watched the footage from last night. Every second of their pleading, their soaked faces, the way his mother said please like it still meant something. When the video ended, Ethan saved it under a new folder name, When They Remembered. He stared at the title for a while, then whispered, "Maybe now you'll remember what silence feels like." Outside, the rain had stopped, but for Ethan, the storm was just beginning. The morning after the rain, the world looked washed and clean, but Ethan's mind wasn't. The images from last night replayed again and again. His family's wet faces, their shaking voices, the desperation in his mother's eyes. He told himself he didn't care, but something in his chest wouldn't sit still. He made coffee and sat by the window, watching the thin steam rise like ghosts from the cup. Outside, the driveway gleamed, and the memory of their SUV idling under the streetlights still lingered. He picked up his phone out of habit. One new text. Unknown number. "Ethan, please talk to us. We didn't mean to show up like that. We just didn't know what else to do. Jenna." He stared at it for a long moment before locking the screen. He couldn't decide if he was angry or tired. Maybe both. At noon, the phone rang again. Same number. This time, he answered. "Ethan." Jenna's voice was small, hesitant. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Please, can we meet? Just for a few minutes. Mom's worried sick. We're at a cafe near Willow Creek Station. Please come." He almost said no. He almost hung up. But curiosity had sharp claws, and it hooked him. "1 hour," he said finally. "Don't be late." The cafe was quiet, tucked between a thrift shop and a laundromat. When Ethan walked in, the bell over the door jingled, and 3 heads turned toward him instantly. His mother's face lit up with fragile hope. Ryan's didn't. "Ethan," his mother breathed, standing to hug him, but he didn't move. She froze mid-step, the air between them heavy. He sat down across from them. No one spoke for a full 30 seconds. Then Jenna broke the silence. "We didn't want to come like that last night," she began softly. "But we really had nowhere else to go." Ethan leaned back. "You could have gone to one of your friends. Or to Ryan's business partners. Or to all the people you used to brag about knowing." Ryan's jaw tightened. "They're gone," he said through gritted teeth. "Gone," Ethan repeated. "What, like they vanished?" Ryan's eyes darted toward his mother. "You want the truth?" Ethan's tone turned dry. "That'd be new." His mother sighed deeply, folding her hands in her lap. "It started after your father passed. You know how much he trusted Ryan with the accounts." "I didn't lose it," Ryan snapped. "I was scammed." Ethan tilted his head. "Scammed or careless?" Ryan's face darkened. "Watch your mouth. You don't know what you're talking about." Jenna cut in quickly. "Stop it, both of you. This isn't helping." She turned back to Ethan, her eyes pleading. "Please. Just listen." Ethan said nothing. She took a deep breath. After Dad's funeral, Ryan tried to expand his investment company. He borrowed money using Mom and Dad's house as collateral. He thought he'd double it in a few months, but the deal went bad. The people he worked with, well, they weren't exactly legal. Ethan raised his eyebrows. "And now?" "Now," Jenna said, her voice trembling, "they're threatening us. We had to sell everything. The house, Dad's truck, even Mom's jewelry. It wasn't enough." His mother's eyes were red. "We left because they said they'd come for us. We didn't know where else to go." Ethan stared at them in silence. He should have felt sorry. A year ago he would have. But the irony was too bitter to ignore. They'd spent years pretending he didn't exist, and now, when their world burned down, they'd remembered his address. "You had no problem forgetting me when I needed help," Ethan said quietly. "When I was starting my business, when I asked for a loan, when I begged for advice. You all said, 'That's your problem, Ethan. Remember.'" Ryan leaned forward, voice low and hard. "You think this is payback time? That you get to watch us suffer? You're pathetic." Ethan's expression didn't change. "Maybe. But at least I learned from the best." His mother whispered, "Please, Ethan. Don't be cruel. We're your family." He looked at her, the woman who once said, "You'll never be as strong as your brother." "Family," he repeated, almost laughing. "You know, that word only shows up when people need something." No one spoke. The sound of clinking cups and distant rain filled the silence. Jenna finally reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "This is all we have left," she said. "A little cash. It's not much, but it'll get us through a week. We'll find work, I promise. We're not asking for charity, just a place to stay." Ethan looked down at the envelope, then back at her. "You want to stay with me?" His mother nodded quickly. "Only until things settle. We'll help around the house, cook, clean, whatever you need." He let the words hang in the air. They sounded rehearsed, practiced, like the same sweet promises they'd made whenever they needed something from him before. Ethan's eyes drifted toward Ryan. "And you? You okay working under my roof?" Ryan sneered. "I don't need your pity." "Good," Ethan said. "Because I wasn't offering any." He stood up slowly, pulling his coat over his shoulder. "You want a place to stay? Fine. I'll let you in. But understand something, this time, it's on my terms." Ryan's expression shifted, confusion mixing with anger. "What's that supposed to mean?" Ethan leaned down slightly, his voice calm and clear. "It means you'll earn your keep. No free rides. No handouts. You'll work. You'll follow rules. You'll learn what it's like to be on the other side of your own arrogance. His mother's eyes filled with tears. Ethan, please don't. But he cut her off. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing it to make you understand. He turned and walked toward the door. Rain was falling again, softly this time. Before stepping outside, he looked back once, his gaze steady and unreadable. Be at my house tomorrow morning, he said. 7 sharp. Then he left the cafe, letting the bell over the door jingle behind him. A small, bright sound in a storm that was just getting started. The next morning, the world outside was damp and still. Mist hung over the trees, and sunlight filtered weakly through the grey clouds, as if even the sky wasn't sure it wanted to start the day. Ethan stood by his window, coffee steaming in one hand, watching the gate camera on his phone. 7:02 a.m. They were there. Ryan looked irritated, Jenna looked nervous, and their mother clutched a small duffel bag against her chest. The same SUV sat at the curb, stuffed with what little they had left. Ethan sighed and set his cup down. He didn't feel joy or revenge, just a quiet kind of control, the kind that came after years of being ignored. He walked out to meet them. Morning, he said, his tone even. Jenna forced a smile. Thanks for letting us come. Ethan nodded but didn't smile back. Before we go inside, we need to talk. Ryan groaned. Can this wait? We've been driving all night. No, Ethan said flatly. You'll listen now or you'll leave. That shut him up. Ethan folded his arms. You'll stay in the guest house. It's the small building behind the workshop. It has 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a bathroom. It's not fancy, but it's safe. You'll find fresh linens inside. His mother's eyes softened with gratitude. Thank you, Ethan. You have no idea. I'm not done, he interrupted. There are conditions. Ryan's shoulders stiffened. Conditions? Yes, Ethan said calmly. You'll work for me while you're here. I own a furniture business. Orders are piling up. You'll help with packing, shipping, cleaning, whatever's needed. You'll earn your stay. No exceptions. Ryan scoffed. You're kidding. You want us to work for you. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. If that's a problem, the road's still open. Jenna looked between them nervously. Ethan, please. Ryan didn't mean. But Ryan cut her off. This is pathetic. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Making us crawl. Ethan's voice was quiet but sharp. Enjoyment doesn't factor in. Accountability does. He turned slightly toward the gate, motioning for them to follow. Come on. I'll show you the place. They trailed behind him in silence. The gravel crunched under their shoes, the only sound breaking the uneasy quiet. The guest house was small but clean, with white walls, wooden floors, and a faint scent of cedar from Ethan's old projects. Ethan unlocked the door and stepped aside. This is it. Towels are in the cabinet. Fridge is stocked for a few days. Don't touch the main house without permission. And don't come in after 10 p.m. His mother nodded weakly. Of course, honey. Thank you. He turned to Ryan. And I've got cameras everywhere. So don't try anything stupid. Ryan rolled his eyes. Paranoid much? Ethan's jaw tightened. Experience makes you careful. Jenna put a hand on Ryan's arm, whispering, just stop, please. Ethan handed her a printed schedule. Work starts at 8 tomorrow. I'll pay you weekly, enough to live, but not enough to waste. You'll each have separate tasks. Do them right, and you can stay as long as you need. Break the rules, and you're out. Clear. They nodded. Ethan gave one last look around the guest house before leaving. Welcome home, he said dryly, then walked back toward the main house, the gravel crunching behind him like punctuation. Once inside, he opened his phone and checked the live feeds. Every corner of the property was visible. The gate, the yard, the workshop, even the guesthouse porch. He watched as they unpacked their bags. His mother neatly folded clothes on the bed. Jenna tried to wipe the fog from the small window. Ryan, however, stood by the wall, glaring toward the camera. Ethan smiled faintly. "Yeah, I see you," he murmured. Later that day, he set up 3 new camera feeds, one inside the workshop, one near the guesthouse back door, and another facing the driveway. Not out of fear, but habit. He didn't trust easily anymore. Not after years of being used as a safety net for people who never caught him when he fell. That evening, Jenna knocked on his door timidly. "Dinner's ready," she said softly. "Mom cooked." Ethan hesitated, then followed her to the guesthouse. The smell of stew and bread filled the small kitchen. His mother smiled nervously as he sat down. "It's not much," she said, "but it's hot." Ethan ate quietly. The food was good, familiar, even. But something in the air felt strange. They were trying too hard, their politeness heavy and rehearsed. Ryan barely touched his plate. After dinner, Ethan stood to leave. "We start early. Don't be late." Jenna nodded. "We won't." As he walked back to the main house, the night air was cool and silent. Inside, he sat in front of his screens again, scrolling through live footage. The guesthouse lights flicked off one by one until only the porch bulb remained. For a moment, Ethan almost felt a sense of peace. But peace is fragile. And when you've been hurt long enough, even silence feels suspicious. Around midnight, one of the cameras flickered. He leaned closer. The feed showed movement, Ryan stepping outside, pacing near the workshop. He was on his phone, whispering harshly. Ethan turned up the volume slightly. "He doesn't suspect anything yet. Yeah, we'll handle it. Just get me the cash first." Ethan's brow furrowed. Cash. Handle what? Ryan looked around, then disappeared into the shadows behind the shed. Ethan sat back slowly, his heartbeat steady but cold. He didn't confront him. Not yet. He wanted to see how far Ryan would go. He switched off the monitor and whispered to himself. "You're on my ground now, brother. And this time, I'm watching." Outside, the mist thickened again, curling through the trees like smoke. In the guesthouse, the lights were off, but not everyone was sleeping. And in the silence of the cameras, Ethan finally smiled. Not with joy, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who'd waited a long time to be in control of his own story. 3 weeks passed, and Ethan's property no longer felt like his own. The quiet he once cherished now carried footsteps, whispers, and the uneasy weight of eyes that didn't belong. Every morning, his family pretended nothing was wrong. They smiled, worked, and followed the rules, but Ethan knew better. He'd spent his whole life reading between their words. Through his cameras, he watched everything. Ryan worked in the workshop, sanding wood half-heartedly. Jenna packed shipments and typed invoices. His mother cooked meals, humming softly, as though nothing had ever gone wrong between them. To a stranger, they looked like a family trying to rebuild. But to Ethan, it was theater, and he was the audience. He wasn't paranoid. He was prepared. It began with small things. The first was a missing wrench. Then a box of expensive varnish. Then a package that vanished from his delivery shelf. Ethan checked the camera logs, rewinding through hours of footage. There it was. Ryan, at midnight, entering the workshop. He didn't turn on the lights, just used a flashlight. Ethan watched him rummage through drawers, taking tools, screws, even a few of Ethan's personal designs from a file folder. He pocketed something, a small flash drive, and left without a sound. Ethan sat back, his face calm but his pulse quick. It wasn't about the stolen items. It was about what Ryan was trying to prove, that he was still in control. The next morning, Ethan said nothing. He simply changed the camera angles, adding one more near the guesthouse door. And then he waited. Days later, more patterns appeared. Ryan made phone calls at odd hours, always stepping outside with his voice low. Jenna looked nervous around him. Once, the mic picked up her whisper. "You shouldn't be doing this." Ryan's reply was colder than rain. "He deserves it." Ethan's stomach twisted, not with fear, but with a strange, bitter amusement. Deserves it. After all the years of silence, insults, and betrayal, Ryan still believed he was the victim. That evening, Ethan invited them to dinner. They gathered at the long oak table inside his main house. His mother was quiet, her hands trembling as she ladled soup. Jenna kept her eyes down. Ryan forced a smile. "Looks like you've been busy, brother," Ryan said, trying to sound casual. Ethan's tone was light. "We all have." A long silence followed. The sound of clinking spoons filled the air. Then Ethan said softly, "You know, it's funny. These cameras I installed, they see everything, even when people think they're alone." Ryan froze, his spoon halfway to his mouth. Jenna looked up sharply. Ethan leaned back, studying their faces. "Do you ever wonder what it's like to be watched when you think no one's paying attention?" Ryan tried to scoff, but it came out nervous. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," Ethan said, smiling faintly. "Just conversation." The rest of the meal was silent. That night, Ethan went back to his monitors. The cameras painted his property in black and white, a silent play unfolding on his screen. Around 11:43 p.m., movement flickered near the workshop again. Ryan, wearing the same grey hoodie, carrying the same duffel bag. This time, Ethan didn't just watch. He hit record and turned on the audio. Ryan was on the phone again. "Yeah, I've got the prototypes. He doesn't even know what he's sitting on. Once I sell these designs, we're clear." Ethan's jaw tightened. His prototypes, those were his original furniture blueprints, worth thousands. He kept listening. The voice on the other end of the call was muffled, but Ryan's tone was sharp, greedy. "No, he won't find out. He's too busy playing big man. Trust me, he owes me this." Ethan's eyes hardened. "Owes you this?" He watched as Ryan stuffed the bag with papers, tools, and even one of Ethan's custom wood carvings. At that moment, something inside Ethan went still. Not angry. Not broken. Just still. He let Ryan finish, close the workshop, and walk back to the guest house. When the lights went off, Ethan sat there in silence, staring at the frozen frame of his brother's face on the screen. The next morning, he called everyone to the workshop. The air smelled of sawdust and tension. "Something's missing," Ethan said simply. Ryan frowned. "What are you talking about?" Ethan pressed a button on his phone. The camera footage from last night appeared on the workshop's mounted monitor. The black and white recording flickered to life. Ryan's voice filled the room. "Yeah, I've got the prototypes." "He doesn't even know what he's sitting on." Jenna gasped. Their mother covered her mouth. Ryan's face drained of color. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You know what hurts more than theft, Ryan? Familiarity. I should have expected it from you." Ryan stammered. You had no right to record me." Ethan's expression was calm. "I had every right. You're on my property. My rules." For a moment, Ryan looked like he wanted to swing at him. Then he looked away, jaw twitching. "You think this makes you better than us?" Ethan stepped closer. "No. It makes me free from you." His mother sobbed quietly. "Please, Ethan, stop this. He's your brother." "Exactly," Ethan said. "My brother. The one who watched me struggle and called it weakness." He turned to Ryan. "You wanted my designs? Take them. Take whatever you need. But you're done here." Ryan's mouth opened, but Ethan's tone cut through like glass. "Pack your things. Be gone by tomorrow." Jenna tried to speak, but he stopped her gently. "You can stay a little longer, Jenna. You tried to do right." But he goes. Ryan stormed out, slamming the door. When the noise faded, Ethan exhaled slowly. His mother stared at him with tears in her eyes. "You've changed," she whispered. Ethan met her gaze. "No, Mom. I just stopped pretending." That night, he sat before his screens again, watching the empty driveway. Ryan was gone by sunrise. But Ethan didn't delete the footage. He saved it carefully, every second of betrayal, every word. The house was quiet again. For the first time in months, Ethan could hear the old sounds he'd missed. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floor near the kitchen door, the wind brushing gently against the window panes. Ryan was gone. His mother and Jenna stayed behind, quieter, smaller, moving through the guest house like ghosts who knew they didn't belong. Ethan didn't tell anyone where Ryan went or what he planned to do next. Truthfully, he didn't care. He had his peace back, and that was enough. But peace, like trust, never lasted long around his family. 2 weeks passed. His mother tried to make conversation during breakfast deliveries. Little things, like asking how his business was going or if he'd eaten. He gave polite but distant replies. Jenna worked hard in the workshop, kept to herself, and never once mentioned her brother. Still, the air between them stayed tense, heavy with unfinished sentences. Ethan could feel the weight of something unsaid every time they crossed paths. Then, one afternoon, Jenna knocked on his door. She looked pale, anxious. "Mom wants to talk," she said softly. "She wants to have dinner with you tonight. One last time." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "One last time. She says we've stayed too long. She thinks it's time we leave." He didn't answer immediately. Part of him wanted to refuse, to say he was done pretending this family could share a table without poison in the air. But another part, the quieter one, wanted closure. "Fine," he said at last. 7 o'clock. When evening came, the guesthouse lights glowed warmly. The smell of roast chicken and baked bread drifted across the yard. Ethan stood at the door for a long moment before entering. The table was neatly set, candles flickering, plates gleaming under soft light. His mother smiled nervously. "You came," she said, relief in her voice. He nodded and sat. Jenna placed a bowl of mashed potatoes between them, her movements careful, her eyes downcast. No one spoke for a while. The clatter of silverware was the only sound. Then his mother broke the silence. "Ethan," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I know things haven't been right between us. I know I wasn't the best mother." He didn't look up. "You don't have to say that." "Yes, I do." She took a shaky breath. "When you left, I thought you were being dramatic. I thought you'd come crawling back. But you didn't. You built something good, something I didn't think you were capable of." Her words weren't cruel, just painfully honest, like she still didn't know how to compliment him without wounding him at the same time. Ethan looked at her, his voice calm. "You thought I couldn't make it. You all did." She nodded slowly. "We were wrong. You proved us wrong." The room fell quiet again. Jenna stared at her plate. The air smelled of butter and rosemary, but it felt heavy, suffocating. Then his mother said, "I want us to start over. Maybe not as before, but as people who can forgive." Ethan's fork stopped midair. "Forgive?" "Yes." Her eyes glistened. "We've all hurt each other, Ethan. What's the point of holding on to pain forever?" He stared at her across the table, the same woman who once told him, "You're too soft to survive this world." The same woman who'd turned away when Ryan mocked him. "Forgiveness," he said slowly, "isn't something you ask for because you're uncomfortable. It's something you earn." Jenna finally spoke, her voice fragile. "Ethan, she's trying. We're trying." He looked at her kindly. "I know you are, Jenna. And you've been honest. But you both need to understand, I didn't move away to punish you. I moved to protect myself." His mother's lip trembled. "From us?" "Yes," he said simply. "From the noise. The criticism. The feeling that I was never enough." She began to cry softly, her hands covering her face. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way." Ethan took a breath and softened his tone. I know. But you did. And pretending it didn't happen won't fix it. They ate quietly after that, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the rain began again. Soft, rhythmic, steady, like a heartbeat tapping against the window. When dinner ended, Ethan stood to leave, but his mother stopped him. Wait. He turned. She reached into her pocket and handed him a small velvet pouch. Your father wanted you to have this. I kept it because I didn't think you'd want it after you left. Ethan opened it. Inside was his father's old pocket watch, scratched, worn, but still ticking faintly. He used to carry it everywhere, his mother whispered. He said it reminded him that time heals everything if you let it. Ethan's eyes flickered with something between sadness and relief. He closed the pouch and nodded. Thank you. She smiled weakly. Maybe it's time we all start healing. He looked at her for a long moment before saying softly, maybe. Then he walked back to his house, the pocket watch heavy in his hand. Later that night, he sat at his desk, staring at the monitors again. The guesthouse camera showed his mother and Jenna cleaning up the dinner table, washing dishes together. For a moment, they almost looked normal, like the family they could have been if pride hadn't gotten in the way. He closed the monitor and leaned back, the steady tick of the watch echoing in his palm. But just as he was about to go to bed, another alert pinged. Motion detected. Back door. Guesthouse. Ethan frowned and opened the feed. The image came into focus. His mother, stepping outside alone, clutching a small bag. She looked around nervously, then crouched beside the trash bin and slid something beneath it. Ethan leaned closer. The camera angle caught only a glimpse of it, a folded paper, sealed in plastic. She stood, looked toward his window, and whispered something too faint for the mic to catch before walking back inside. Ethan stared at the screen long after she disappeared from view. He wasn't angry, just curious. The next morning, he'd find out what she hid. But for now, he let the camera roll, the soft tick of the watch syncing perfectly with the blinking red light on the screen. Tick, blink, tick, blink. And for the first time in years, Ethan realized something unsettling. Revenge wasn't a single act. It was a rhythm. And it was still playing. The next morning was strangely warm for early spring. The mist had lifted from the yard, and the sky looked washed out, pale blue, almost peaceful. But Ethan couldn't shake the image from last night, the shadow of his mother hiding something under the trash bin. He finished his coffee, then stepped outside. The grass was damp, glittering with dew. Birds chirped from the fence as if nothing had changed. But something had. He walked toward the bin slowly, his boots crunching on gravel. The folded plastic packet was still there, half covered in dust. He crouched and picked it up. Inside was a letter, sealed tightly in a clear bag. His mother's handwriting looped across the front. For Ethan, when I'm gone. He frowned, feeling an uneasy chill. He didn't open it, at least, not yet. He slipped it into his jacket pocket and looked toward the guesthouse. Smoke rose faintly from the chimney. They were awake. Everything looked normal, too normal. Later, he sat in his office reviewing camera footage, still thinking about the letter. On screen, his mother and Jenna moved quietly in the kitchen. They looked tired but calm. Nothing suspicious. Until the next camera, the one pointed at the side of the workshop. Ethan paused the footage. Ryan. He froze the image. It was from 2 nights ago, Ryan's familiar frame, sneaking around the back of the workshop, even though he'd been kicked out. The timestamp blinked 2:18 a.m. Ryan's hood was up, and in his hands, he carried something heavy, a fuel can. Ethan's pulse quickened. He scrubbed through the next minute of footage. Ryan set the can down beside the fence, pulled out his phone, and appeared to take photos of the property. Then, as if realizing he was being recorded, he looked directly into the camera, straight into Ethan's eyes, and smirked. The video cut out seconds later, the feed going black. Ethan leaned back slowly, the weight of realization pressing against his chest. So that's what this was. Revenge for being caught. Or maybe desperation. The day dragged on. He didn't mention it to his mother or Jenna. They worked as usual, unaware that Ethan had spent the afternoon quietly replacing every can of gas and sealing off the workshop's back door. He wasn't afraid of Ryan, but he wanted to see how far this would go. By nightfall, the wind had picked up. Clouds rolled in, heavy and restless. Ethan watched from his study window as the first drops of rain began to fall. The driveway shimmered under the porch lights. Then came the sound, a sharp bang, followed by a hiss. He looked up, heart racing. Through the window, orange light flickered against the trees. He grabbed his phone and opened the live feed. Flames. The camera by the trash bins showed a growing fire near the driveway, licking upward toward the guesthouse fence. Ethan sprinted outside, rain pelting his face. The smell of gasoline hit him hard. He grabbed the fire extinguisher and ran straight toward the blaze, the sound of his boots splashing through puddles. Jenna screamed from the porch. "Ethan! What's happening? Get inside!" he shouted. His mother's terrified face appeared in the doorway. She cried out as the fire roared higher, bright against the night sky. Ethan pressed the trigger, white mist clouding the air. The fire hissed and shrank, sparks flying across the wet gravel. Within minutes, it was over. The flames died, leaving only the sharp scent of burnt rubber and smoke. Ethan bent down, breathing hard. The trash bin had melted halfway through. Behind it, charred pieces of something metallic glinted faintly. He reached down and picked one up, a crushed lighter. When he turned around, Jenna and his mother stood frozen, eyes wide with fear. His voice was low, steady. "Where's Ryan?" Jenna shook her head. "He's gone, Ethan. You told him to leave. Then why was he here 2 nights ago?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Ethan pulled out his phone, opened the footage, and turned it toward them. Ryan's face glowed in the blue light of the screen, that same smirk burning into the moment. "He was planning this. I don't know if it was to scare me or destroy something, but it doesn't matter. He crossed the line." His mother broke down, sobbing. "He's not evil, Ethan. He's just lost." "Lost people don't carry fuel cans," Ethan said coldly. He turned and walked back toward the house, soaked and silent. Jenna followed him to the porch. "Ethan, please," she whispered. "Ryan's been angry, but he wouldn't hurt you." He looked at her, his voice sharp but calm. "He already did. He made me build walls I can't take down." Jenna blinked back tears. "We'll leave tomorrow. I promise." Ethan nodded slightly. "That would be best." Inside, he changed out of his wet clothes and sat at his desk. The smell of smoke still lingered in the air. He pulled the letter from his jacket and stared at it for a long time. Then he broke the seal. "Ethan," it began, "I don't know if you'll ever understand how sorry I am. I didn't raise you right. I let your father's pride and your brother's arrogance drown out your voice. You were the only one who ever tried to hold this family together, and we punished you for it." His mother's handwriting trembled on the page. "If you ever find this, I hope you know I see you now. I always should have. If something happens to me, don't come looking. Just live, Ethan. Live better than all of us." Tears stung his eyes, but he blinked them away. The words didn't feel like closure, they felt like a warning. He placed the letter on his desk, turned back to the monitor, and watched the burned patch near the driveway. Rain was falling again, smothering the smoke. Then, suddenly, motion. A figure appeared at the edge of the screen, half hidden by darkness. Ryan. He was back, watching from the road, his face just visible under a hood. Ethan stared at the screen, every muscle tightening. He reached for the microphone connected to the speaker at the gate and pressed the button. "Come closer if you're brave," he said quietly. Ryan froze. Then, as if realizing Ethan could see him, he turned and vanished into the storm. Ethan let go of the button, his hand steady despite the adrenaline. he whispered to himself. You're not the only one who can play with fire. And as the last drops of rain hit the blackened ground, Ethan knew something certain now. This wasn't over. It was only beginning. The morning after the fire felt heavy and hollow, as if the smoke still clung to the air long after it had faded. The driveway was blackened, the ground scarred. Ashes curled like paper ghosts in the breeze. Ethan stood at the edge of it all, coffee untouched in his hand, watching the spot where the flames had burned brightest. He hadn't slept. All night, he'd replayed the footage, the shimmer of gasoline, the way the fire had eaten through the dark, and finally, the last image. Ryan's hooded face at the edge of the property before he vanished into the storm. By sunrise, the guest house was silent. Jenna and his mother hadn't come out yet. He didn't blame them. There were no words left that could patch the hole Ryan had torn open. Ethan set his cup down on the porch railing and walked slowly toward the guest house. The gravel crunched beneath his boots, sharp in the morning stillness. He knocked once. Mom? Jenna? No answer. He tried again. It's me. This time, the door creaked open a few inches. Jenna stood there, pale and red-eyed. He's gone, she said quietly. Ethan frowned. Ryan? She nodded. He came back late last night. Mom talked to him outside for a while. Then he left before dawn. She's been crying ever since. Ethan's jaw tightened. Did he say anything? Jenna hesitated. Only that he'd finish what he started. I don't know what that means. Ethan sighed. It means trouble. He stepped inside. The small kitchen smelled faintly of smoke and tea. His mother sat at the table, her eyes puffy, hands shaking around a mug. She didn't look up when he entered. He's not coming back here, Ethan said firmly. Her voice was barely a whisper. He's my son, Ethan. Ethan's tone softened, but only slightly. And I'm yours too. That broke her. She put her head in her hands and began to sob quietly. I've ruined everything. I raised one son to be cruel and made the other believe love had to be earned. He stood there for a moment, unsure how to respond. The anger he'd carried for so long suddenly felt tired. Maybe revenge had burned itself out the way the fire had, loud, hot, but leaving nothing but ash behind. He left her to rest and went back to his office. But as he opened the door, something caught his eye, a small envelope lying on his desk, placed carefully in the center. He froze. He hadn't left it there. He picked it up. The handwriting was different this time, rougher, rushed. You think you can erase me, Ethan? You can't. Check your cameras. It wasn't signed, but he didn't need to guess. Ethan's stomach tightened. He unlocked his computer and opened the security feed. At first, everything looked normal. The driveway, the fence, the front gate. Then he switched to the camera overlooking the workshop. His breath caught. The door was open. He hadn't opened it since the fire. He zoomed in. The latch was broken clean through. Inside, something shimmered faintly on the floor. He recognized it instantly. A small fuel can. Ethan bolted up, heart pounding. He grabbed his keys and ran outside. The rain had stopped, but the sky hung low and gray. As he neared the workshop, the smell hit him. Faint gasoline again, mixing with sawdust. He pushed the door open slowly. The fuel can sat in the center of the floor. On the workbench, something else caught his attention. A folded note weighted down by a nail. His hand trembled as he picked it up. You took everything from me. I warned you. Now, you'll feel what it's like to watch something you built burn. He looked around sharply. The place was empty, silent except for the creak of the rafters. But as he turned toward the exit, he saw the trail, a thin, glistening line of gasoline leading toward the doorway. He stepped back and looked up at the security light above the door. The wiring had been tampered with. He planned this. Ethan moved fast. He yanked the fuel can aside, grabbed a rag from the shelf, and began soaking up the spill. His pulse thudded in his ears. Behind him, footsteps crunched. He spun around. Jenna stood at the door, eyes wide. "Ethan, what are you doing?" Mom said she saw smoke again. He pointed to the trail. Ryan was here. He tried to set this up. Jenna's face drained of color. "Oh my God." Together, they finished wiping the last of the gasoline and dragged the can outside. Ethan locked the door, his hand shaking. He turned toward her. "Pack your things. Both of you. You're leaving today." "But..." "No," he said firmly. "This ends here." By afternoon, he helped them load the SUV. His mother hugged him tight, tears soaking his shirt. "I never wanted it to be like this," she whispered. "I know," he said softly. "But sometimes it takes losing everything to see who we really are." When the car finally pulled away, the silence that followed was heavier than any he'd known. Ethan stood there until the dust settled, then walked back into the house. That night, he sat by the window, staring out at the empty driveway. The moon hung low, silver light glinting off the blackened gravel. For the first time in years, there were no figures in his cameras, no voices on his property, no family to watch or be watched by. He thought it would feel peaceful. But it didn't. He walked to his desk, opened the top drawer, and pulled out his mother's letter, the one she'd hidden under the trash bin. He unfolded it again, reading the last line slowly under his breath. "If something happens to me, don't come looking. Just live." He set it down, then picked up his phone. The camera feeds showed only the dark outlines of trees swaying gently in the wind. Everything was still. Safe. Until one feed flickered. The front gate. A new image appeared, a single folded paper taped to the gate. The motion alert had caught it seconds ago. Ethan frowned. He switched to the zoomed view. The note was barely visible in the dim light, but 3 words stood out, scrawled in thick black ink. "I always finish." Ethan stared at the screen, the glow reflecting off his tired eyes. Then slowly, he reached forward and turned off every monitor, one by one, until the room went completely dark. He sat back in the silence, the ticking of his father's pocket watch echoing faintly beside him. Tick, tick, tick. He closed his eyes. The fire had gone out. The house was quiet. But somewhere beyond the gate, in the dark, the past was still moving, patient, unfinished, and watching. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy the story, please hit the like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon. Comment below for more stories like this. Your support means the world to us.